Me. I'm Greg. Well, there goes my theory about a double dose of Pfizer vaccine being an anti-aging formula savage.
And I'm Jake. Wow, that vaccine tastes like freedom. Also, why am I tasting it? Anyway, on today's episode, we talk vaccines. News bargain. Oh, try that one more time. It's the day for it. On today's episode, we talk vaccines, news bargaining codes, social welfare, and so very much more.
I'm absolutely pumped, Jake. Then in the spirit of reconciliation and recognition... In the spirit of reconciliation and recognition, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're podcasting today, and we recognise their continuing connection to land, water, and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And this week our thoughts are with Auckland.
Yes, they are indeed. They are indeed. And Greg, we got a listener message this week.
We did. Do you want? Am I doing it? Are you doing it? Who's doing it?
Why don't you do it, and then because it leads into I've got a very nice seg.
Oh man, I do love a good segue.
Story.
Before we get into it, Jay, I do want to announce to you because we didn't speak about this off air. We spoke about many things off air: how to solve world hunger. Why is Chappelle Corby or whatever? Is it her sister? I don't know. On Dancing with Stars.
Great question.
All of these things that we really delve deep into. But one thing we didn't speak about, Jake, is the fact that we have just ticked over 25,000 downloads for the podcast. That's in total. That wasn't last week. That's in total. But you know what? We've done pretty well this week. This week we got a few little bumps. So hello to anyone who is listening. That we've got nothing for you. So
you know what I think did it, Greg? You know what I think did it?
I do.
I think it's all of those people that have hit the subscribe button and given us a rate and review on their podcast viewer or listening thing of choice.
Absolutely. Look,
that's what did it.
True. I don't want to I don't want to toot our own horn for too long, Jake, but it does feel good to toot the horn. And 25,000 downloads, why not celebrate a little bit.
If I had $1 for every download,
we'd be thousandaires.
Yeah.
Can I say, Jake, that one of the committed listeners, we have a few committed listeners who get in contact with us. One of those people is Kane. Kane received a little kit from us at the end of last year containing a mug and a sticker pack and a whole bunch of other things and a personalised note. He said, hi, Greg and Jake, Kane again. Kane, you don't have to worry about that. We love it. I would like you to pick up the news about COVID-19 vaccine overdose given in 2 elderly Australians. And I would like to know your guys' point of view in terms of vaccination in Australia. How do you feel like the competition of importing the vaccine all over the world? Just one other thing, Jake, while I think of it, the Brittany Higgins case, just in case people didn't hear our conversation about it last week, we've opted to not tackle that in any way whatsoever. Because we just can't do that justice, and I'm simply not smart enough, Jake.
Well, we decided it's not the place of a not so seriously podcast. Frankly, it is a serious case, and it deserves all of the appropriate coverage, and not necessarily 2 amateur comedians. Fluffing over it. So
even if we verge into that territory, Jake, about comedians, gosh, I'm blushing. I've never been so adored in my life. All right, so Kane has asked us about the vaccines, Jake. A couple of people got double the dose, meaning that they're double the vaccinated this week. So tell us what's happening. I wonder if did they count as 2 people, like each of those? Like, is that 4 people that were vaccinated in one hit?
Well, actually, it was essentially quadruple the dose. So it was so an 88-year-old man and a 94-year-old woman were this week given 4 times the recommended dose of the Pfizer vaccine at Holy Spirit Aged Care Home at Castledine in Queensland. Now, essentially, the report suggests that the doctor administering the vaccine had not completed the online competency training required to dilute and administer the vaccine. So it just didn't know what they were doing. Well, not only does it seem important, Greg, it is really quite important.
Yes.
But so Healthcare Australia, who have been contracted by the federal government to roll out the vaccine to aged care facilities across the country, has been put on notice after an investigation found that the company guilty of 2 serious breaches of those clinical standards. So pretty bad. Now, just in terms of the broad facts of the case, it's such a harrowing thing to have occurred. The whole premise of getting the vaccine is not necessarily protecting those of our age, Greg, and younger. It's really about protecting our age and aging population from the serious effects, the more fatal effects of COVID. So the fact that potentially they could have been harmed in undertaking the vaccine, that's so awful. It also does potentially impact on community confidence, because it really does. Community confidence really does rely on a no problems type of rollout. And broadly speaking, community confidence in general in vaccines, in this specific vaccine, is around 60 to 70%, based on various. There've been a number of polls of the public, and the baked on sort of anti-vaxxers. They normally account for only around 12% of the public, but with that expanding to about 30 to 40%, that suggests that people do have some underlying, I won't say fears, but more questions about the vaccine rollout, which is, how did it happen so quickly? What are all these new, mRNA vaccines? I've never heard of those before. But moreover, why did it happen so quickly? Also, Greg, why did it happen so quickly? It normally takes like 4 years to do a vaccine. All of those questions have been answered. And I think answered both eloquently and for a wide audience. But invariably, people will have these questions. And my suggestion is, A, get vaccinated, but B, go and speak to your doctor about it. If you have any specific questions, go and speak to a doctor about it. Don't Google it. Don't Google it. Do not do it, because
don't Facebook it.
Exactly. Don't Facebook it. Don't Craig Kelly it. Go to your doctor and say, hey, I've got these specific questions about this vaccine. Can we maybe talk through it? Because I'm super keen to not get coronavirus, but I'm also super keen to not grow a second head.
Yeah, look, and it also comes off the back of another news story this week. I'm reading now from Chanel Zagon from 9 News. She says more than 120 doses of the Pfizer vaccine have been thrown out after more than double the supply of required vials was delivered to a Melbourne aged care home by mistake in another rollout bungle. The Federal Health Department has confirmed 125 doses, or 25 vials in metric, of the COVID-19 vaccine were thrown out as it could not be guaranteed the required sub-zero refrigeration process had been followed. So, this feeds into two sort of streams of Australia, doesn't it? It feeds into the media, which will latch onto this, and 3 streams really. It feeds into the media, which will put it out there as news. Why not? Because it is news and it is interesting, and worthwhile for the public to know about it. That the political side, where Labor will get to go, look at this bungled mess that we're in, blah 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 blah. Look over there in terms of other countries. Just stay focused here, and then you've also got the anti-vaccinators, which will just say, look at this. We are right. We are right about this, and I can guarantee you, based on these 2 news stories, which have been huge this week, that anyone who was on the fence may have just jumped over the fence into the anti-vax, maybe not anti-vax, but maybe hesitant, COVID-19 hesitant. There's got to be these people in between who are also going to get their vaccinations for when you can travel overseas, because those vaccinations are tried and tested. But to have doubts about COVID-19 doesn't mean that you're anti-vaxxer. It just means that you have these doubts. And so there would be people who used these news stories as a catalyst to cement themselves into that side of having doubt about COVID-19. And for particularly youthful people like yourself and I, Jake, give or take a few greys in my beard, why not? Like you said, it's not necessarily for us. It's for the older people. And if they're vaccinated, well, why do I have to put myself at risk, to do that? So
it's a great question. Do you ever want to see your parents again?
Yeah, well, I mean, they'll be vaccinated, right? That's fine.
No, but that's it's just it's.
I'm not saying that's how I feel at all. By the way, I'm just saying I can see that the
completely understood where you're talking. Yeah, I had a conversation went over to my parents for family lunch for a family birthday yesterday, and there were a couple of my brother's friends there. Lovely people, and one of them there raised a question about the vaccines in general, and it started the table, reverberating.
Yeah.
It set us all, I suppose, on edge. But frankly, we had a really nice conversation about it. I think their objection related to the number of different strains around the world, and whether the vaccine is able to keep up with it. Invariably, at the moment, all evidence points to the fact that the current schedule of vaccines are able to protect from the new strains. But invariably, the more people we vaccinate, the less people get infected, and the less opportunities the virus gets to mutate to a new strain.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's one of those double-edged swords.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong too. I think is it the UK strain that the vaccines tend to protect against, but the the South African strain?
South African, yeah.
That one is a bit iffy. Apparently the data's not all in on that one.
Yeah, that's right. And the fact of the matter is, you have to do a tremendous amount of testing and an analysis before you can get those answers. And these variations are popping up quite regularly. One piece of news, I believe it was from the Pfizer vaccine. I mean, certainly it was in the mRNA vaccines, of which Pfizer is one, is that they believe that they can essentially adjust the proteins in the vaccine the spike proteins rather, every 6 months in order to keep up with changing strains if that is required.
Okay.
So it's great news.
That is very good news. If I remotely understood anything you just said, I'm sure it would be even better news. But if you say it, Jake, and then you end with "that's good news," I'm all in.
Oh, I love it.
I'm all in. Please do not take medical advice from this podcast under any circumstance whatsoever. But yeah, look now. This leads into my little warm up story, Jake. And gosh, we've got a lot to get through, so I'm gonna talk a little quicker than usual. Australian Open crowd booed the Tennis Australia president, Jane Herdlicker, when she mentioned the coronavirus vaccine during her speech after Novak Djokovic's win. Here's a little bit of what that sounded like, Jake.
With vaccinations on the way, rolling out in many countries around the world, it's now a time for optimism and hope for the future. The top of that list is the Victorian government. Without you, we could not have done this.
All right, now here's my big take on that, Jake. So you can be the premier of a state, and you can be a strong leader, and you can save people's lives, and it's still just not cool to like politicians, is it? It's just not. It's never going to be really cool to start clapping at the idea of actually really just getting into a politician and just going, yeah, that's fantastic. I just don't know. What's your take on it? I mean, is there a specific crowd who was at the Australian Open? Is it?
I think it was that. I think so. This was immediately following the win from Novak Djokovic. We said on last week's show or I said on last week's show, Novak Djokovic is known for having some anti-vaccine views. Not necessarily that he's anti-vaxxer, but he has, a number of times used some of the anti-vaxxer talking points. But and he has, downplayed the virus. He also, of course, at the very beginning of arriving here in Australia, downplayed the requirement for quarantine and tried to drastically reduce it, which was the city. He was speaking to the city who had locked down for over 100 days in a row in order to quell the rising tide of coronavirus. Anyway,
slightly misread the room there, but yeah. So
what do I think? Well, what do I think it was, Greg? I think it was the crowd of the Australian Open who only 2 days before had been told those tickets that you purchased. Well, you can't turn up because we're going into a snap lockdown.
Yeah.
So I think I believe it was just a bit of rash, noisiness from a couple of people who, in a large stadium, you get 5 people booing, and all of a sudden it sounds like there's 600.
Look,
so
that's the thing, right? I think it was
just acoustics.
Yeah, and she's probably running the experiment for us, right? I'm sure there are a few people scratched out a few sentences from their upcoming speeches once she announced that and just sort of got booed, like, okay, do not mention the government. It may also be the case to sort of, I suppose, boost the idea of the crowd not being as intellectual as what we might have liked, because tennis watchers are we're a intelligent bunch. Maybe it's just the fact that she brought politics into it. That they just thought, now is not the time. Now is not the time to be talking about politics or bringing it into it. This is a sports thing. Yes, the government helped, but let's not forget that the people also dug deep, and it's the people who are making the sacrifices, not necessarily the politicians. So maybe that was a bit of an element of it as well. I don't know. If you did boo, if you were there and you booed, or you want to have an opinion about why you think people booed, please send us an email to thepouchthepodcast@gmail.com, or you can get us on the various social media outlets, all except the ones that people actually use these days, of course.
Exactly. We're still on Bling Blong and Flag Flog.
Absolutely. All right, Jake, we got a lot to get through in this federal politics situation.
Much, oh my God.
So let's get into it. We're congratulating Rupert Murdoch today, Jake. The real winners of this Facebook situation. Last week, I said a few strongly worded words about how I felt and agreed with Andrew Bolt in the Facebook decision.
Unprecedented.
Yeah,
unprecedented that people agree with Andrew Bolt. Yeah,
absolutely. Sky News is a failing news. The idea that Facebook removed the news, and not only just news, what they considered to be news. Lots of emergency outlets, the Bureau of Meteorology, they removed all of those in one fell swoop. Last week or a week and a half ago now.
Yep.
And I said it was very heavy-handed, too heavy-handed, far too much corporate bullying. And thankfully our government doesn't negotiate with bullies, Jake. We stay right away from it. China, we're not negotiating with you. Facebook, we're not negotiating with you. Jacinda Ardern, you bully. We are not negotiating with you.
How dare
I know. So Joshua Frydenberg said, no, absolutely not negotiating with anyone about anything. These are too heavy-handed tactics. Isn't that right, Jack?
Yeah, but I would say that was a tremendous amount of negotiation.
So talk us through the negotiations.
We're just not negotiating with you, but we are, guys, when we're at this table, we're negotiating with you. But in general, we do not negotiate with bullies, but let's sit down and negotiate. So pages of media publishers were reinstated early on Friday morning after a week of social media giant
I got to put
Facebook.
I got some applause here, Jack. Yeah.
Hooray! Left channel clapping. It's just the best. It's just the best. But so I said the pages of media publishers were reinstated early Friday morning after a week of social media giant abruptly blocked users from posting or sharing article links. The ban, which was prompted by a world first piece of legislation, I love Greg. The importance.
You love Greg.
I love Greg. I do love Greg. That should be clear by now. But I love, we were doing the world first with the whole let's do a coronavirus, let's do a coronavirus inquiry into the origins and spread of coronavirus. Let's do that. Let's, marginalize China, and that definitely didn't go so bad. Let's do this world first legislation to curb the power of tech giants, and that definitely didn't go bad. Let's not be the first in the world. Let's not be the greatest in the world in in addressing climate change or anything. Let's do it on media anyway. But yes, the ban which prompted a world first, prompted by a world first piece of legislation, caused a massive stir both locally and internationally, and comes amid a global conversation about whether tech giants should have to compensate news publishers for their content. So it was the ban was all in response to the federal government's media bargaining code, which forces internet platforms to pay for news content, and it had passed the House of Representatives just the evening before. Now, on Tuesday of this week, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg announced the government had agreed to amend the code to effectively exempt Google and Facebook from the code that it was created to rein in their power. It's so great. We won, Greg.
Yep.
In that we have the law, the media bargaining code has passed. However, the amendments that have been made to it essentially mean that Google and Facebook, i.e. the people that we created the law to impact, will probably never be impacted by the law. But the amended legislation essentially... So the changes would give the digital platforms 1 month's notice before they are formally designated under the code.
Yeah.
And this would give those involved vastly more time to broker agreements before they are forced to enter into binding arbitration agreements.
Yeah.
Now, I would say, Greg, and I talked about this last week, the other option here, it was actually proposed by former PM Malcolm Turnbull, and he is, I believe, he brought in Guardian Australia, so he has, he has some skin in the game in here. But essentially, the idea would be to instead of forcing the tech giants to go into binding agreements with the news organizations, instead of doing that, what we could do is make Google and Facebook and other tech giants pay the tax that they, essentially should be paying in Australia, i.e. force them to pay what they should be paying in order to operate in Australia's economy, and take some of that taxation dollars and put it into a nice little fund that essentially can fund public interest journalism that journalists would apply to in order to essentially get a grant in order to do this public journalism.
Yeah.
So that's public interest journalism, I should say. So that is one way that I think would be significantly more fair. It would mean that all media organizations could apply for that instead of, essentially just Rupert getting a whole bunch of cash.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the way I understand it too is that Facebook and Google had already sort of jumped on and started making deals.
Yes, that's right.
So they do their news showcase, which I had to look into. I mean, look, it didn't make me jump from Apple News, but I mentioned it to a few people at work, and because they were a bit confused about the news thing, and I just said, look, jump if you've got a Samsung phone, jump onto Google News. It seems to be pretty good. They're paying their dues when it comes to that sort of stuff, and I think you get a certain amount of free articles and all those sorts of things. But so this will lead the way, hopefully, for a Facebook News sort of outlet as well, which will combine and some of those new news outlets. But from what I've read too, you would start at the top and work your way down to some of the smaller players. So hopefully those smaller players get a chance to be part of the news showcase and also the whatever Facebook news decides to do.
I hope that the tech giants are being proactive in terms of approaching all in the media ecosystem, rather than forcing the media ecosystem to come to those tech giants and ask for compensation. You know what I mean? My hope is that that Facebook and Google are proactively going out to seek each and every one of these news publications, because there are plenty of independent ones that do great public interest journalism, but invariably they're not a large media organization, and thus they may not be picked up immediately or indeed ever.
Yep, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? So you can still sort of go out and you can still listen to your podcasts that have, a different...
we encourage that.
A different bent, to some of the media outlets. You can subscribe to some independent news outlets as well. They come straight into your inbox, all those sorts of things. I'm not going to give any particular plug, but, there's other ways and means. But, when ABC's news website traffic dropped by 30% when Facebook decided to initiate the ban, that's a huge amount of traffic. I was surprised myself, but I suppose given the demographic of people who go on ABC News and also who use Facebook, maybe not so surprising. But yeah, 30%, a drop in one day is huge. So that drop would have occurred over, they would have had 30%, maybe even more, over that whole week. So pretty interesting stuff. A lot of people just sort of said, look, I don't really get my news from Facebook, but maybe there's more to it than that. Maybe that, like I said, the Bureau of Meteorology was banned. Maybe there's little bits of information that you missed out on that you didn't know you missed out on because it was banned. So who knows? Who knows with all this curated stuff?
Content. Yeah,
yes, content, Jake. Who knows what you're missing out on? So, search far and or wide. Read widely, what was it? Read widely, read thoroughly, and something else. There was a third one. Anyway, Craig Kelly, Jake. I do love a bit of Craig Kelly news. He's liberated from being a liberal. Very funny. I like that one. I'll pay that.
Thank you. I cannot. I believe that was Sydney Morning Herald. That was not me.
Done.
It's my sort of pun. I like it.
Yeah. Look, you can't copyright a pun, Jake. No.
Especially when it's a good one.
Let's use it and take credit for it. Okay, now Craig Kelly is such an interesting character. There's obviously
an enigmatic character, you might say.
Yes. Now, obviously, before we get into this, Jake, it does touch this story has the tendency to go into the territory that we're not touching. So the idea of accusations behind closed doors and all that sort of stuff. So I think I think the story involving another high-level staffer.
Yes.
So we won't go down that path, but we are aware that this story can go down that particular path around those accusations that are happening at the moment in Parliament. But we'll stick with what we know, Jake, and what we know is that Craig Kelly suddenly
sounds like a very targeted message towards Jake.
Surprisingly, Jake, he left in a shock. I was shocked.
He did.
I may have accidentally sort of like pumped the air during a meeting when the news the news came through on my phone, and I had a look and it said Craig Kelly has resigned from the Liberal Party.
You're like, yes. And then your boss turns to you and says, you're happy that the budget has decreased by 16%?
Look, and I don't know, right? I don't know. All right, talk me through the facts, Jake, and then I'll give you a bit of my opinion about that.
A bit of a Greg hot take.
A bit of a Greg hot take.
Hot Greg hot take. I like that too.
Hot Greg hot take.
So yes,
hot cake. A hot cake. Hot Greg hot take.
Actually, that sounds delicious. Hot cake, hot Greg, hot. Anyway, so yes, Craig Kelly stunned colleagues earlier this week with a decision to quit the Liberal Party and move to the crossbench. The Member of Parliament from Hughes hopes to run at the next election as an independent. Now, Mr. Kelly said that his defection came down to, quote, freedom of speech, as he felt restrained about speaking his mind on coronavirus treatments. And I should say that every single one of those coronavirus treatments are not supported by Australia's health department or any of the chief medical officers in the states or territories. But yes, Mr. Kelly, however, did make it clear that he would continue to provide confidence and supply to the government, particularly on items that the government took to the last election. Now, in terms of strategy, Greg, it appears that it's probably a reasonably good idea for Mr. Kelly if he wants to remain in Parliament, and that all stems from the premise that invariably he was probably going to lose pre-selection, right?
Yeah,
he was most likely going to lose pre-selection.
Yeah.
He came extraordinarily close last election, and the Prime Minister and others had to intervene.
Yeah,
on his behalf.
That was pointed out by our listener Fred Stokes, right? He mentioned that Scott Morrison had to intervene 2 times for Craig Kelly to make pre-selection, and this time after the the supposed dressing down, it was made clear that he wasn't going to intervene again. That Craig Kelly was on his own, and on a bit of a Bitcoin downward spiral, Jake.
Exactly. And so invariably, if he wasn't going to get pre-selection again, then he was going to have to run, and he still wanted to, maintain his or retain his seat. Then he was going to have to run as an independent. Now, the only way that you can run as an independent, Greg, and be successful is
hang on. I've got to take notes here. Yep. Good. Just in case the podcast doesn't do well. Yep.
Well, yeah, exactly. So the only way that you can do it, if you're going to run as an independent, the first thing that has to go in your favor, and this should go unspoken, but the other guys, plural, I should say, have to be like really terrible, and there has to be a protest vote in your favor.
Really terrible.
So if like you can
vote.
If you can like trick the other guys, the other people into saying things that, either marginalize a great, a significant part of the population, just something like that, something that really turns them off the public or the public off them.
Vaccines,
that
apparently.
would be great. Well, the other way that you could run as an independent and still win is if you have a very high personal recognition or a very strong personal profile.
Personal profile.
Yeah.
Right,
now, that strong personal profile should not necessarily be smelled, so I'm out. But yeah, so look, he does have, he has by a large margin the most number of Facebook followers of anyone sitting in Parliament today. So it is one of those things that he does. He does invariably have a reasonably strong personal profile.
He has the 40+ vote narrowed down, doesn't he?
Well, yes. Well, who knows? Who knows what their age is?
Okay,
but
that's the interesting thing, right?
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised this day and age, Jake. This moment in history, given the surprises that have happened. That if he actually won as an independent, because there's a lot of talk about the fact that the loyalty actually with Craig Kelly was because he was a member of the Liberal Party.
Yep, that's right.
What if he did? What if he actually won as an independent?
What would they say? What would that say about the people?
What would this say about
the populace?
Yeah. That's right. This undercurrent. That's what I wouldn't be surprised about. If there was an undercurrent of people who can't be vocal because they get shut down and are saying, well, Craig Kelly speaks for me. When I'm interviewed or if I'm asked in a poll or if I'm asked, over the phone, of course, I'm not going to announce that I love Craig Kelly. But what I will do is when I go to vote and it's anonymous, I'm going to, put my money where my mouth can't be, Jake.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Vote
I suppose
it'd be interesting to see how many votes he gets, I suppose.
Yeah, it really will be. I mean, the guy is staunchly anti climate change action. Essentially, he questions the sides of climate change.
Yeah.
But which is always interesting when someone with no qualifications in those in fields related to science comment on science. It is always a little bit funny because he's been doing it obviously on the coronavirus stuff. But yeah, look, really interesting story. It will be interesting to see what occurs when when the next election is called, how he campaigns, how popular he is with the general public. A lot of polling this week suggested that he is not safe. That in fact, exactly as you said, it is a reasonably safe Liberal seat, and as a consequence, whomever takes it. Whether they be, anti-climate change action or anti-coronavirus action, or whatever it happens to be, wherever their politics lies, there's a really good chance that any Liberal candidate would do better than Craig Kelly.
Yeah, and we know that polls are 100% accurate and always,
all of the time. Yeah, definitely,
always reflective of how things pan out. Yeah, look, I do encourage you if you do have time, try and find a few interviews with Craig Kelly. I don't. There's one or two nuggets of information there that, he's not, I suppose he's trying to make some interesting points. Now, I'm not saying that the points he makes are valid. What I am saying is that if you want to know what an undercurrent of Australian people think and an undercurrent of people, try and follow the sort of pathway that they try and follow, he's probably a good start to that. And if you don't want to give him any airtime, I understand that as well. But it's interesting to sort of get his point of view and just see, okay, maybe it's not 100% he's evil. You know what I mean? There's some sort of good in there as well. I'm not saying you have to agree with him. I'm just saying, check it out. Check it out. The interviews that he's done are interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't think he's evil. I think he's a self-serving. I mean, I would struggle to find a stronger word than idiot. It's so dangerous for him. He was in government. He was in government. He did have a seat within the government until last week. Yeah. And he was using that platform in order to undermine the government's message on coronavirus during a time that is so incredibly important that we've got a vaccine in the country that can prevent people from getting coronavirus, that can get us back to something approaching normal, that can protect our parents and our parents' parents, and us to a reasonable extent as well. And he was undermining that. So, frankly, I think he's dangerous. It's idiotic. And, I'm all for free speech, but when it comes to, he shouldn't be expecting that that people wouldn't, speak out against his right, his claimed right to free speech. If he says something stupid, he should expect that stupidity is going to be addressed.
Yes. I couldn't have put it better myself, Jake. I couldn't have done it better.
I'm pretty sure I could have.
All right. Well, that's at least we've got half a script.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Jake. This sort of, like we said, this story delves into this idea of it does branch off into the culture that's being explored at the moment in Australian politics and coming to the fore, if you will. The foreground. And one of the major happenings this week was that Liberal MP Nicole Flint wore a bin bag to call out sexist rubbish. Oh, no, wait, she quit.
That occurred a little bit ago, yeah.
On Monday, 27th of July, 2020 at 8:01 p.m. to be precise. Now, she has quit. So this is Nicole Flint has a huge history of being on the short end of the culture stick, if you will, in Parliament. So this week she had decided that she'd had enough. Talk us through the facts, Jake.
Yeah, so Nicole Flint suggested that she announced that she is going to leave politics. She announced that she will not sit at the next election, and it's amid what she refers to as a toxic situation. So her electorate her electorate is held by the Liberals by a margin of 1.4%. And she's made no secret over the last couple of years that she's faced a tremendous amount of problems since entering federal politics. So last year she called out what she said was sexist rubbish that women in politics are forced to put up with.
Yeah.
With pre-selections soon to close in her South Australian seat of Boothby. She's informed the Liberal Party members in her electorate that she will not be recontesting the seat. Now, the PM had a lot to say about her, said that, her position of deputy whip, Liberal whip, Liberal Party whip was invaluable and that she'd done a tremendous job in ensuring that her party was united. Now, the second-term MP has made no secret of these problems that she faced since entering federal politics, including being targeted by a male stalker and having her campaign offers defaced with graffiti words, quote, skank and, quote, prostitute. Now, last year, she posted a social media video detailing those incidents while wearing, as you said, a garbage bag to call out what she described as the sexist rubbish that women in politics are forced to put up with. So yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, so that they've got now the government lacks two incumbents. to defend their seats at the next election. When is the pre-selection for? She's the member for Boothby. When's the pre-selection for that happening? Did we say?
Look, it'll be in the next few months. I didn't say, but it'll be in the next few months because essentially, what they're ultimately waiting for is an election to be called.
Yeah, right. Okay.
The pre-selection should absolutely occur before then. There should be, it's normally like 6 to 12 months out in terms of the cycle.
Yeah.
Look, it really depends. My guess is that because she's not running, they will start that pre-selection cycle a lot sooner, if not almost immediately.
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that struck me is the fact that this is action, right? That she's taking action. There's no warning. There's no we should do this or we should do that. It's I'm doing this. Like I'm leaving the Liberal Party because it's just dreadful. And to be quite frank, even if you dig and try and find positive stories about how women are treated in Parliament, you can't, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's really challenging to do that. And so every story that comes out, every person I've heard interviewed, even people who are doing the who was it? Fran Kelly and who's the other host of the Party Room? I forget at the moment.
Carvelis.
Patricia
Carvelis. Yeah.
She they were both parliamentarians. They both worked in Canberra. They've both worked
in the press gallery. Yep.
Yeah. So even people who aren't now at the moment, part of politics are saying that the behaviour in Parliament is just dreadful. That it's just a horrible place to be. It's a horrible place for women to be trying to move up the ranks. All of this stuff has come out. Well, not come out, but it's a bit like when the US election happened and everyone suddenly got really interested in how the electoral college worked and all that sort of stuff. And we were all sort of learning alongside each other how all this stuff worked, including Trump himself, apparently. But
sure he got
I
there,
sort of feel like that. I sort of feel like, there's all this stuff that we're learning about Parliament House and about how it works and how the rules for particular, HR grievances and all that sort of stuff works. And it's totally different than how it would work in a normal corporate structure. The staffers are able to hire and fire at will. People are just basically let go. The process that we've seen happen when people put in a complaint about other people is tremendously horrific. I mean, it just wouldn't pass any sort of what do you call it?
Wouldn't pass muster.
Wouldn't pass muster in any other corporation, in any other situation. Yet in Parliament House, it seems to just be acceptable to be the norm, and there's this pushback against that. And I think it's good that we're all learning that that's the case at the moment.
Yeah, so we can do something about it. I just want to, because I think early on when you were talking about her experience, Greg, I think you mentioned that she her issue was with the Liberal Party. It wasn't necessarily with the Liberal Party, and I don't know that you were suggesting it. I think it was just a slip of the tongue. But her issues were not with the Liberal Party in general. Her issues were with politics in general and the toxicity in politics in general.
Yeah.
And that includes, from within her party, most likely, from within, the various spheres of Parliament, from the, staffers, from other offices, etc., as much as it is from the public, as well, as the public perceive parliamentarians as a particular group of people. So anyway, it's an issue with the ecosystem. It's not necessarily with a party, because we hear these stories being raised about all sides of Parliament, not just the Liberal Party. It's in the Nationals, it's in the Liberals, it's in the Labor Party, it's in state politics. It's not isolated. It's just it is.
It's a broader political.
It is
problem,
a broader issue with part of that is potentially because before people go into politics, they're often, high-powered business people working in extraordinarily stressful positions. And in those types of environments, quite often there is a culture of fostered around this type of, highly charged, aggressive, angry, constantly needing to move, constantly needing to escalate. But yeah, it's unfortunate when cultures that are toxic are brought into, it's unfortunate when you hear about those toxic cultures, being brought to light. I just hope that means that we're able to do something with that information and change it for the better.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they do have some reviews coming up. I think there's 3 in reviews. One of them is an independent review into the culture of politics. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, there's some change based around that. I know a few independent MPs, Zali Steggall, is it?
Zali Steggall, yeah.
Steggall. She's, they're pinning their hopes on these reviews and the outcomes of those to change things. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Speaking of changing things, Jake. That's all I've got.
No, you're right. There was an extra. It's the final story of the week, Greg.
It is. Well, it's not the final story of the week. It's our final story. That's it.
Exactly. Look, there has been a change. The federal government have announced that they're going to increase the base rate of JobSeeker.
Hooray! Where's my applause? Hooray!
I love it.
And I've got my bicycle horn ready for the next bit.
There's so the increase is $3.50 per day. Yay!
Oh. No. That's not good.
Different clown horn.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, the base level of JobSeeker, Greg, is and the related payments will increase by $50 a fortnight. From April 1 under changes that will also toughen the obligations of people seeking work. So the boost will take the payment to an extraordinary, Greg, $310.40 per week.
Yes.
Or an increase of just under $3.50 per day. Just enough for a very, very small piccolo latte from McDonald's.
Yeah.
I think that'll get you by, and it'll go out to 1.95 million people, including those on parenting payments, AusStudy, and youth allowance. So the amount of money a person on JobSeeker and related payments can earn before their payments is affected as well, and it'll be set permanently at $150 a fortnight. Pre-COVID, this was just over $100 at $106. So during COVID, it went to 150, then to 300.
Okay.
Where it is currently. So it'll go back down to that 150 a fortnight. So, yes. Now the detraction from the rate increase, which I'll talk about in a second, but the detraction here is that from early April, job seekers will have to search for a minimum of 15 jobs per. It'll be. A minimum of 20 jobs per month.
Yep.
It's currently, I believe, at 15 jobs per month. And there's also a hotline being set up for employers to dob in people who don't take job offers.
Man, I just don't like that.
It's creepy.
Like that.
It's awful. Because it can be coercively used. I mean, how
that's
bad
shocking.
is that?
Like, that is really bad, because, that's just inviting a whole raft of behaviors before you even get to the point of being paid by the employer, that they've coerced you or bullied you basically into taking the job. I still think that job seekers, I feel weird even saying this out loud, but job seekers need the ability to be able to decide which jobs fit their lifestyle and their, whether or not they've gotten the right vibe from when they've walked through the door. You can't be having all of this press about what's happening in Parliament at the moment and this bullying of people into doing things that, making decisions that they might not want to make. And then on the other hand, setting up this hotline. Even in a workplace, without a hotline, people are sort of, already doing the bidding of bosses that they don't necessarily want to be doing, going outside of their job descriptions, whatever it is, to start that from afresh. it just doesn't feel right at all. I mean, I can see it happening. I can see it unfolding already. You know, the boss basically says, "Look, this is the job. This is the pay. I'll be ringing the hotline if you don't take the job."
Yeah, and that's where it gets ugly, right? Because when they ask or when they tell you how much you're getting paid, and if that amount is less than what you're currently getting on New Start, then that sets up a really precarious situation. You know, for example, New Start is $310.40 per week. What happens if the job that they offer, is only going to be paying you $290 odd per week?
Yeah.
You know, that essentially means in real terms you've just lost $20 that you were already scrimping and really finding it difficult to make ends meet to pay all of your bills and pay your rent and get your food and keep clothes on your kids. Like that's precarious. And then they go and dob you in, which means that you are likely then not going to be eligible for New Start. So it sets up a situation of really bad coercion.
Hate it.
I know.
And you know what? The only reason I can think that the government has done this is so that they can get rid of it and claimed to have made progress.
Yeah. Well, so
look, we scrapped this terrible hotline.
No, exactly. So look, in the grand scheme of things, this is a really, 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 really small increase, right?
Yes.
But it is also the first increase in a quarter of a century. Like this is the first real increase since 1994, Greg.
Really?
Since there have been three Labor prime ministers, and Labor are normally the ones that would make a move on this type of program, being more sort of geared towards the social safety net. There have been three, Labor given actually two of those prime ministers from Labor were the same person, Rudd, then Gillard, then Rudd. They didn't do anything on this, and so this is the first actual and real increase. But look, I suppose the question that I would be asking myself is, if I lost my job today, could I live on $310 a week until I was able to get a new one? And it's a hard question, right? Because and particularly for people in politics who can just get a job in a consultancy firm or call their mates to find something, And I'm
wasn't there some interview this week where they were talking about the fact that politicians get some ungodly amount for just travel alone? Wasn't that one of the interviews?
Oh, yeah.
$280 a day or something for travel.
Yes, that's right. That's just that's their travel allowance. That's not what they're getting paid.
Yeah, that's right.
It's crazy. Yeah. It is absolutely huge.
And that people on job seeker, sometimes can't even afford those basic things to be able to get a job, like a suit or have a haircut, all that sort of stuff. So
that's exactly right. Yeah. And if you can't, if that amount of money isn't enough for you to pay your rent, to pay for your food, to pay your electricity and your water and the various other commodities, and also get a haircut and get on public transport in order to turn up for an interview for a job that would be paying more than $310 a week.
Yeah.
Then it's not enough. That should be the simple answer.
And also, while you're looking for a job, right, your hours are all over the place. Like it's now a full-time job looking for a job, and
it is.
If you've got interviews all over the place and all that sort of stuff, but you've still got kids at home and you've still got kids to pick up from school and all that sort of thing. I mean, they just make it so difficult. It's a real shame, particularly in this day and age where people really aren't. I'm sure there are some people out there, but most people aren't choosing to be unemployed. It's not. It's a really tough market out there at the moment. And anyway, it's absolutely shocking. I know that. Scott Morrison's between a rock and a hard place. He can't go too hard on making it seem like he's making the job seeker attractive by increasing it too much. But that really takes. That really takes the intelligence out of the people who are on JobSeeker at the moment, and I don't like that very much. So
no, exactly.
$50 seems like the compromise to say, hey, we've done something, but to all my constituents, the dog whistle is, not too much. We still want them to have a job, and having a job is the most important thing in the world and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit sad.
I think the reason they implemented the Job Dobber, if you like, the Job Dobber hotline,
nice. Did you make that up? Is that yours?
I don't know. I think I may have heard it earlier, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. I can't be sure. But the reason that they implemented that according to Scott Morrison and those who made the announcement of the change to JobSeeker, was around the premise that he had been informed by businesses in general, that people were rejecting offers for jobs because they could earn more money on New Start or welfare programs. So, it makes a little bit of sense from that perspective, but from the broader perspective, it does really set up a chance for coercion, for people to be coerced into a job that they are going to make less money on.
Disenfranchised people, nonetheless.
Yeah,
Anyway.
absolutely. People who are desperate.
All right, Jake. I do have to wrap it up. We're taking the family to the city today, which is
Sounds
very exciting.
awesome.
Yeah. So I'll give you a full update on how that went.
Yep. I look forward to it.
But we got to jump on the train very shortly. But thank you so much for chatting with me today, Jake. It's been such a massive week. I was almost tempted to say, let's do a midweek one. And then I realized that I have a job and a life and a family and fitness goals and things like that. Happy gym day to me. Today will mark 28 days straight of me going to the gym. So hooray.
Congratulations.
Hooray. Yay.
That's great.
But anyway, apparently my voice is telling me that that's it.
That's it.
Well,
Greg, yes, if people want to help to support the show and keep it chugging along, to keep our lights on, it'd be tremendous if they went to patreon.com/The Pouch the Podcast.
Yes.
And joined our other fellow luminaries, our other friends who do support the podcast. But if you're not ready for that level of intimacy, that's cool too. If you could do us a smidgen of a favor and go to your podcast player of choice and rate us and review us, because it does help for people to find us. And also, it makes us feel nice and warm and fuzzy.
And that's the most important thing, Jack, is our feelings.
Exactly.
And if you want to share the love, you can do so by telling your friends, families, and foes to head to thepouchthepodcast.com, where they can choose their favorite podcast player of choice. Hello to all our new listeners. Little bonus, if you want a mug, more than happy to play mug or sticker again for the end of the month. So if you've made it this far and you'd like a mug, send me an email at thepouchthepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll see what we can wrangle. If not a mug, then definitely a sticker. I've got a little pile of stickers here as well. Oh, this is the mug, by the way. There you go. Look, that's what it looks like.
You keep punching the mic, Greg.
No, yeah, well, that's a stupid mic.
It's in your face.
I'm not used to talking with a microphone in front of me, My rants to my family are usually without a microphone. So, there's the Pouch the Podcast mug. Get it in you.
Fantastic. Get it in you.
Get the juice that's in it.
Go eat a mug.
Crunch that mug.
Exactly.
That's it. That's the name of the episode. Crunch that mug. All right.
Crunch that mug.
Peace out, my friend.
Sir.
Thank you very much for chatting with me today. And hi and bye to everyone else.
Thank you, listeners.
See ya.